Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our panel discussion this afternoon. My name is Mark Dubois. I am an NABD 20 group moderator. I'm also a consultant and trainer specializing in buy here, pay here, and lease here, pay here. Our panel this afternoon is building your team in the digital age. We've assembled an all-star panel for you to field your questions and get your answers. And we've also factored in large employee base, small employee base, so when they do their introductions, make sure you get an idea as to which one you'd like to field your questions to if that's important. We'll do introductions in just a moment. If you attended this morning's session, Ken Shilson presented the attributes for long-term success in the buy here, pay here business. Number 4 on that list was hiring a competent team of knowledgeable professionals to the long-term success of your business, and I believe that. If you listen to the words in that sentence, hiring a competent team of knowledgeable professionals, there's a lot in that sentence. If you're like the panel members up here and myself, you probably believe that your staff is probably the most valuable asset in your business. And number 2, you probably believe that the success of your business will be based largely on the competency and the hard work of your staff. So for that reason, I think we have a great topic for a panel discussion this afternoon. Let's get started with the introductions first. I'll start with the panel member to my right, Neil Waters. Please introduce yourself to the audience.
All right, thanks, Mark. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Neil Waters. I work for U.S. Auto Sales. We're headquartered outside Atlanta. We have 24 locations. Been in business since 1992, so it'll be our 26th year this year. We have over 500 employees, but we're a hub and spoke model, so our headquarters handles anything administrative, titles, underwriting, collections, and our stores are mainly sales outlets. And 100% buy here, pay here, and excited to be here, so thank you.
Neil, did you review which states you're in?
Oh, sorry. We are in North Carolina. We're heavy in Georgia and South Carolina, and then we have 2 stores in North Carolina and 2 in Jacksonville. And I run marketing and new store development for the organization.
Awesome. Thank you. Next, David Andrews.
Thanks, Neil. My name is David Andrews. I'm with City Enterprises. We're in the wholesale and retail business. We've got 7 auctions and 9 retail locations, of which 7 of those are buy here, pay here. 2 of them are kind of like CarMax. Been in business for 47 years. I still love what I do, so I'm going to keep on doing it as long as I like it. If you don't like it, it's hard to do. Anyway, we've got about 900 employees, and I try to give it all I got every day. Business has been really good lately. We're in Tennessee, Mississippi, and Alabama at this point in time.
Awesome. Great. Let's move over to Scott Allen.
Thank you, Mark. As he said, my name is Scott Allen. My company is Autoland. It is 1 location in Fort Worth, Texas. I'm the sole proprietor, the only stockholder. I am strictly buy here, pay here, small dealer, 25 cars a month. I've grown. I had one time had 3 locations, and I'm back to 1. Approximately 220 notes right now, and 7 employees.
Great. Let's move over to Chris Martin.
Good afternoon. My name is Chris Martin. I am with Team Easy Auto out of Fayetteville, North Carolina. We've got 8 employees, and we're primarily in the lease here, pay here business, and we've been doing it for 26 years this year as well.
Awesome. So these are your experts from small to large employee base. One thing I remember about 30 years ago, my grandfather told me, if you think you're in the car business or the buy here, pay here business, rethink that. You are in the people business, whether it's the people you hire or the people you work with. So I think we've got a lot we can discuss this afternoon. This panel discussion is going to be broken into 3 sections. We mulled over how we were going to best present this topic. It's obviously a very big topic. So we're going to start by asking a couple of questions on recruiting. Then we're going to ask a couple of questions on hiring. And then I'm going to field a couple of questions on employee engagement or retention. we've got some prepared questions that I'm going to go through first. Depending on how long it takes us to get through the answers, I'll ask 3 or 4 questions and move on to the next topic. After that, I'm going to open it up to questions from the floor, and that can be on either recruiting, hiring, or employee retention. So, let's start with the $1 million question. Gentlemen, what is the greatest challenge your company has in recruiting and hiring staff? Let's start with you, Neil.
Okay. Sure. I would say overall, in terms of people management, one of our greatest challenges is our turnover. So you might think, well, that's not really recruiting or hiring, but it really comes down to that. So if you're not looking for the right employees, you're not asking the right questions in the interviewing process, you're going to fail. And our turnover rate is high. It's 56%. Overall, our sales team is over 70%. So you can imagine that you're turning it through employees pretty quickly. And if you don't do things right on the front end in terms of recruiting and even trying to find the right people, asking the right questions in their background, we look for job stability as one of the keys for us. I think you're gonna run into trouble, and it's something we're working on every day.
David?
Thanks, Neil. So in this low unemployment environment, we've got to find somebody that's gainfully employed and talk them into taking a chance and come into work for us, and then invest in that employee. So I would like to start this out by saying, or asking a question to the audience here. How many people have read Good to Great?
No,
Now,
there's a
one more
couple
back
in
over here.
yeah.
So when I read that book, it was great, so I read it again. I said, okay, I'm gonna buy this for every one of our managers and make them read that book. Because if you don't get the right employee in the right seat on the bus, you're gonna fail or not be nearly as successful. But we gotta invest in that employee, get them to come to work for us, and then keep them, like Neil's saying, 10% of our employees have been with us over 10 years, but we all have turnover, and that turnover costs you money. So getting the right person, getting them on the bus, will make you much more successful.
Okay, for me, recruiting challenges, being small, we're very nimble, and there's a lot of cross-training. But probably the biggest challenge we have in recruiting is no to low benefits. I mean, that's simply it. I mean, they walk in the door, they want to know about the 401k, I got one. How about health insurance? I don't have any. So some of those are the biggest challenges on the small, for recruiting, that is, that I would say are tough in small buy here, pay here.
And I would say we struggle with all the above. It'll be a recurring topic probably for me this afternoon, but we experienced 110% turnover about 3.5 years ago, and we've fought back from that. But as Scott had just mentioned, the competition that we have in trying to hire good people whenever everybody else is out there trying to hire good people. So, I think that's our biggest challenge, is trying to figure out ways to differentiate ourselves and make ourselves better. And hire better people.
Mark, I've got one more thing I want to add. When you read in the paper that Amazon is going to pay all their employees $15 an hour, that's now the base. You're not going to hire anybody, a good person, for $10 or $12 an hour. We were talking about condition reports at one of our auctions, and our general manager asked all of them, I said, what are you paying for condition report writers going up a standard pay? He said, $8 an hour. I said, well, what kind of condition report are you going to get for $8 an hour? It's just not going to happen. And he couldn't hire anybody for $8 an hour, $8.50, whatever it was. And also, you got to pay, you're better off to pay a good person a little bit more and get that person and keep that person.
Great point. So in terms of tools that you could utilize to hire staff, and for the audience purpose, I'm going to say if we look primarily at sales, maybe collections, and maybe managers, what tools, platform, or program do you utilize to assist you with your recruiting efforts? Neil?
Speaking with our recruiting team, they find Indeed to be successful. It's a fairly, you can kind of customize the pricing based on your needs. You can do an a la carte or subscription-based model, but apparently there's a lot of people that are using Indeed, and the profile that you can set up as a candidate looking for jobs is pretty robust. We also use LinkedIn for sort of more managerial type or higher level positions. So those are the platforms we use. We kind of, we have a website where we post our jobs too, but I think Indeed is very popular now, and LinkedIn. I don't know if you guys would agree or disagree.
We just started using the Indeed portion of your answer right there, and that's been really good for us. But on the, when we're talking about sales and collectors and mechanics and all, we've done real good with referrals from our employees to find people like that to bring on board and all, because if the employee's happy, he'll bring one of his good friends on board, pay him a decent pay, and they'll come to work for us and all. So that's worked really good for us. We've got our website that we post any internal job openings to, and we'd certainly like to promote within to keep somebody working here instead of going to work somewhere else.
Just a question on that, Dave. Do you pay for employee referrals? Do you pay your employees to refer employees?
That's a good question. I'll find out for you.
Because
I hope we do.
I tend to agree that, I think employee referrals are probably the best, because you're not going to, as an employee, I'm not going to refer somebody that's going to do a crappy job for the organization, because there's a reflection on me at the end of the day. So I tend to agree with that, and we do pay for employee referrals, because you're going to pay recruiting costs anyway, and then if you can get someone that you think is going to stay around for a while, you've got an ROI there. So that's a good point.
Yeah, it'd be much more efficient to pay another employee than to pay a employment agency to hire somebody.
Well, for me, and again, going back down to the small side of it, I've tried Indeed. I've tried Monster. I mean, $350, $400, $500 for 30 days. The candidates that I get typically are overqualified or just don't fit what we're looking for. My biggest successes have been with the $38 Craigslist ads and Facebook. Just recently hired a really terrific salesman and found him through Facebook. The other one, of course, is referrals. I mean, I think that's across the board. If you can get a referral from your sales department, from a salesman for another guy at another lot who's not happy or whatever, and he's worked with him before, knows something about him, the referrals are probably across the board the very best.
Depending on the position, we've tried a little bit of all that as well. As far as our administrative staff, we used to primarily hire by using a temp agency, because it gave us an opportunity to try that person temporarily, and if it worked out, we'd bring them on permanent, and if we didn't, we'd try somebody else. Then I was frustrated dealing with some of this, and I remember venting to my sister one day, and she recommended, this was a year or two or three ago, and recommended Indeed, and we had quite a bit of success with Indeed. But then here in the last year or so, we haven't had as much success. I think David or Scott mentioned it, we would get inundated with a ton of resumes, and they really didn't fit the position that we were hiring for. So this last time that we had to make a hire, which was recently, we used ZipRecruiter, and it worked great. It narrowed down that pool of individuals that we were trying to recruit, and it gave us some really good resumes. We didn't have to look through 500 resumes to pick out 3 or 4. We probably got 20 resumes, picked out 5, and made a good hire from it.
Chris, did you find the temp agency was expensive, or you just didn't get good results out of it, or both?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, all that. It is expensive. They charge you a premium, obviously,
Yeah.
because they're putting the employee on their books and paying the taxes and all that. But we did have some success with it. I mean, we still use that. We go that route from time to time, especially if we're, struggling to hire for a position through, by using Indeed or ZipRecruiter, or again, we use Facebook as well. But we still do use that from time to time. And, you know, the advantage for us, and sometimes they don't publicize this, but with the temp agencies, they'll send you resumes before they send you people. So if you want to go through the resume and look at it so you're not wasting your time when people show up, you know, they'll do that for you as well.
Okay, good.
Hey, Mark,
Yep.
one time all the time we're having trouble hiring salespeople, so we interviewed 3 different temp agencies and said, okay, we want to hire some salespeople, gave them the parameters. Because my manager said, we can't hire any salesmen. I said, well, if you talk to a temp agency. No, I hadn't talked to them. So we interviewed these 3 temp agencies, and we interviewed the salespeople. We hired 14 salespeople at one time, put them through training, and I guess that's been 6 months ago. 8 of them are still with us, and we think that's a success.
Yep, would agree. I hope you're writing down your questions, because as we get towards the end of this, we're going to open it up to the floor for questions. Remember, we're dividing this into 3 sections: recruiting, hiring, and employee retention. So I'm going to ask another couple questions on recruiting, then we'll move it over to the hiring side. Job descriptions. Do you provide written job descriptions for each position in your company? If so, or if not, why not? Neil?
We do, and it's incumbent upon the hiring manager normally to, in our case, to provide some details to HR. Of course, we're in a large organization, but so we have those departments, and then HR really writes the job description and uses some benchmarking in terms of determining what the salary should be in the marketplace. But yes, the answer is we absolutely have job descriptions in different grades for different positions.
Thanks, Neil. We also absolutely provide job descriptions, because if you can't tell somebody what they're going to be doing, then they can't do their job. But we look at those job descriptions every year and make sure they still fit with what we want these employees to do, and it's worked real well for us.
Yeah, I think this is one of those things, again, that's going to transcend no matter what size you are, whether you have over 500 employees or you have 7. If you don't have a written job description, you need to get one. Everything needs to be documented, it all needs to be written down, and part of the employee manual. So absolutely do use job description.
What's your job description?
Well, that's undetermined. It's always evolving. Mine is always evolving.
I'm just kidding.
We do as well. You know, I think in the beginning, again, as Scott mentioned, we're so small, we just, you know, you may not feel like it's important or you need to do that, or, you know, and one of my problems is I expect people to do the same kind of job that I would do if I was in their position, or have the same initiative, and it only took about 20 years to figure out that's not the case. But I think a job description, you know, sets the tone, it sets the expectation, and we use that as a tool when we're bringing them in and kind of getting them, bringing them through orientation and just setting the expectation.
Okay, good. Let's move on to, well, not move on, but one more question on recruiting, and that is the always curious question of when do you discuss salary and benefits with potential candidates? Neil?
Normally, benefits come up pretty early on. I think that's fairly common. Pretty early on. Normally, the candidate's one to bring that up, so we'll answer those questions as needed. We won't necessarily go into a ton of detail, but we will provide them with some information on what they get when they join the organization in terms of benefit options, and then they get a full orientation when they join the organization in terms of what more details around those benefits, and then salary. We normally discuss once we've sort of landed on a potential candidate. So it's not normally in the first conversation, but depending on the position, we may ask where the employee needs to be at in terms of pay range, because otherwise you're kind of spinning your wheels. And anymore with employment so low, it's hard to have that. It's hard to not have that conversation, because not a lot of people have options, and normally if they're jumping ship, they're looking for more money a lot of times. So those conversations come up sooner rather than later, I would say.
Okay.
So our job descriptions have a range of salary that we can afford to pay for those job descriptions, but it comes up really early in the process, because I don't want to be talking to somebody that wants to make $30 an hour when a job pays $15 an hour. So we bring that up pretty fast in the conversation.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd have to say, I mean, as I talked about earlier, there's not a lot to talk about for benefits. when you come to work for Autoland. So salary and commissions, or whatever the pay plan, is usually discussed right up front. On my salespeople, I have them on strictly straight commission because I want them hungry. I want them hungry all the time. And then, but any other positions, whether it's hourly or salary, typically that comes right up front.
We're very similar. We usually discuss a salary range in the beginning, and then once we get it narrowed down to one or two candidates, that's when we normally get a little more detailed as far as exactly what the job pays. And, usually, obviously you really get into the weeds, as Neil mentioned, whenever you make that offer to the individual and try to negotiate a salary that they're excited about and, you can afford to pay and you're excited about.
The only thing I would add when I was talking about the commissions, I said I want them hungry, is that that's the way I've done it for forever and ever, and I try to make it so that they can actually make more money than I can. I mean, it's lucrative. Since I don't have benefits, then I'm going to pay them well when it comes to those commissions.
And our sales jobs are 100% commission too, so it's very common, I think. And to your point on keeping them hungry, and they can make a lot of money if they want to sell cars. Network in the industry, look for referrals themselves, repeat business, customer referrals. We don't care how much they make because we're going to pay them per car, and it can be.
Not going to cap them, not going to worry about that.
Exactly, and then their store managers make money based on how well their sales consultants do. So they love a hungry sales consultant because they're going to make more money too. So that's the way we structure it, and we find it to work well.
So the recruiting side of this panel discussion, I call getting people, bodies into the hopper. How many people do we have to select from? Where do we find them? How do we attract them? Now we're going to go into the actual hiring side of that. Question number one is a question we get asked frequently in our 20 groups, and that is, how do you determine the number of employees you need for your size of operation? Neil, great question for you.
Yeah, so for us, we look at, from a sales perspective, we look for each sales consultant to sell about 15 cars. Once we're kind of saturated, once we're at that 15 car mark at each store, we're looking for that next sales consultant. Not that they can't sell more than 15, because many of them do, but that's kind of the benchmark. If you got someone selling 5, they have capacity, they can sell more. So our rule of thumb is about 15 cars per sales consultant per month. Now on the collection side, we hire about 1 agent per 300 accounts. So every agent handles 300 accounts, and that's just for our business model specifically. So as we grow, that's how we staff.
So we don't have any past due accounts, so we don't need any collectors. Just kidding. No, ours is based on projected volume, and then also over the years we've always been eccentric about customer service. 60% of our business comes from repeat business. And you give good customer service, and to me, those repeat customers are free. You don't have to advertise, you don't pay anything for them, and the salespeople you bring on board today get the benefit of those customers coming back, because I'll be out in the community somewhere and they'll say, well, I bought my car from City Auto. I say, who'd you talk to? I don't know. And it's hard to get salespeople to maintain a relationship with their customers, but if I was a salesperson, that'd be the number one thing I'd do. So we send out letters, we do everything we can to make sure that we try to bring that customer back in to buy another car from us. Our sales guys don't sell 15 cars a month. I wish they did. I wish they could sell 12 cars a month. But, they're going to.
Ours don't all, I mean, to be fair, ours don't. We try and get them to that point.
But we got people that sell 25 cars too. Yeah. But I try not to ask anybody to do anything that I don't think I could do myself.
Scott, over to you. How do you determine? Well,
if you guys were in the session earlier with Ken Shilshin, you know that inventory is like the biggest expense that we have, and behind that is payroll. So what we try to do is run nimble and be a lot of cross-training so that we're very flexible. My salesmen can take payments. They can bring a customer in and write up a service order if they need to get work done on their car. So there's a lot of cross-training that goes on. I would say that typically for sales numbers, though, if you broke it down, I'm probably about 8 to 10 cars per salesperson is where I'm at. So if I'm trying to get to 30, which I am, and that's, we're right between 20, right around 25 right now. We added that third person just this last week. So, yeah, I would say that with us, we're very small. There's a lot of cross-training. And again, as you know, it's one of your biggest expenses. So I try to keep it as close and as small and nimble as we can possibly be.
Same here. We're always looking for efficiencies. Every time, I would say this, in the last year or two, we've made it a habit to where every time we're looking to make a hire, we try to take a look. Again, we've got a small organization, but we try to look at the whole company and see if there's a different way of doing what we're doing. Is there a better way to align responsibilities and do what we do a more efficient way? But as with Scott, I mean, we're trying to do everything we can to stay lean, and we'd rather reward the folks that we have than add 3 or 4 other folks and then everybody kind of struggle. And we, again, try to reward based on performance, and if you're going to be a part of our team, you're going to perform, or it's going to be tough to stay. But again, we try to keep it as lean as we can, we try to be as efficient as we can, and we try to evaluate that on a regular basis.
And to your point, Chris, I think sometimes I think from our standpoint, we add staff too quickly, and that can hurt the other sales consultants in the store because they feel like they're giving up some leads to the new guy or gal. And so I think, we need to be careful in terms of how quickly we hire, because we got to feed everybody, and that can be a deterrent. And that sometimes leads to, I believe, higher turnover, at least from our standpoint.
Well, and it's I'm sure we all experience it. It's a tough, balance, because you want to be fully staffed, but you don't want to be overstaffed.
Exactly.
And it's tough.
Great, let's move on to the next question, and that is, it's probably something that we don't give enough time or thought to, but we should, and that is, what is the onboarding process that you use for newly hired employees? Neil.
So we have an onboarding class every Monday for any new hires that we have for that week. And it's conducted by our HR area. We have a couple of people, HR specialists, that handle, they tour our facilities, they talk through benefits, they talk through what their job life is going to be like. And then really it's just a few hours, and then they set them free to the whether they're a store employee or they're a collector. And then there's most of the training is on the job training. So if you're a sales consultant in the store, you really are trained by the folks in that store, the sales manager or others. And but we do have a training manual for our sales team. We have a lot of sales consultants, so we have the need for a training guide that they're supposed to work through and talk through. So most of it's on the job training, though, and they get coached as they go. And there's no better way to learn, really. It's not a lot of classroom training, but there is that first initial kind of HR orientation that they go through. But after that, it's training with your peers or your supervisor.
Thanks, Neil. We use a combination of electronic orientation or signing in, and then orientation to go over the handbook with our potential employees or the new employees and all. And we want to make them feel good about working for us and working with us to start building a relationship. And then, depending on the position they take, we assign them with another employee for like the first 2 weeks to make sure they just know that we're in the business, that they understand what we're doing and what our culture is about. And to us, culture is a really big part of enabling somebody to stay with us for the long term.
For us, again, there's not a whole lot of an onboarding process other than an employee manual, job descriptions, and go get them. Obviously, we have weekly sales meetings every week, and our training is daily. So, and it's case by case, it's on the job, and it's just working with them constantly, just from day one, basically.
We've been using ADP for a long time for our payroll, and they help our HR director and our orientation manager, which I'm both of those people, and making sure they don't do anything illegal or we don't want to do anything incorrectly. We want to do it the right way. And we want to be fair to them, fair to us. And so they've got, it's a, great system that we use, kind of a, check the box type system. You can't really forget anything if you check all the boxes, make sure we get all the right forms filled out. We do a drug test on everybody. And again, we have them sign the form, before we hire them that it's okay to do that, and they, are going to adhere to our drug policy. Same thing with a background check. We pull a background check on everybody before we extend an offer. And again, that's really our orientation process and going through the job description on day one, which I normally go over with them. And then again, we've got eight folks, including myself, so it's on the job training from there.
One thing I wanted to add, I'm glad to hear that you drug test and background check. I think that's important, and we do the same. But one thing we do, and I kind of failed to mention, is that you probably heard a lot about compliance today and maybe tomorrow, but we use a compliance management system called Complete, COMPLI, with an accent over the I. But that's what we use to, and every employee in the organization, no matter their role, has to take classes through this Complete system. It's a third-party system, and it keeps them above board in terms of how they advertise themselves, how we close deals. Are we perfect? No, but we force everybody to take this training, not only when they start, but every year. So it's brutal to go through as an employee, but it's super important for those, especially those that are customer facing.
So that's a really good point right there, Neil. We do that also as far as taking a discrimination and harassment training course. And I even make myself take it every year myself. And, if you can just dodge one EEOC claim, it's going to make your life a whole lot easier.
Okay, good. They just answered one of the next questions I had coming up, but that's great. I have another question here on, do you utilize any personality profile or behavior assessment tools as part of your recruiting or hiring process? Neil?
We don't currently. I think there is some value there. I've worked for organizations in the past that do use those, but what I found was that they're kind of expensive, and the hiring manager doesn't really use them. So if you can use them in the right way and find value in them, then I think that they're good. But today we don't, and I think that's the reason why, is because I just don't think that they would be used. But we do provide some guidelines and scripting around interviewing, making sure we're staying compliant in our interviews, making sure we're asking the consistent questions, no matter the candidate, and no matter the role. So while we don't use any personality assessment tools, we do give our hiring managers and those that are interviewing some guidelines.
Thanks, Neil. We don't use a service for that, but we do have some behavior-based questions that we use to get a feel for how the employee lives, what he does, what's important to him, and what kind of employee he's going to make before we hire him, because a bad hire just costs everybody grief and money.
Yeah, I would say the same thing would be, the easy answer is no. I don't use the profile, the personality test or of any kind. What we try to do, and just the best example of that is the last salesman we hired just this last week. The GM, first thing he said was, "I don't even know why you're here. It's October. You're not going to make any money for 3 months. This and that." The guy comes back with, "I have my own following. I have my own Facebook. I have this and that." So the interview process is where we're going to find out if these folks have what it takes, I think. And I don't use a personality. I think we can get that on the one-on-one interviews that we conduct.
Same here. We don't use one either, and we try to do as good a job as we can in the interview process to figure some of those things out and ask the right questions and structure the interview such that if there are some issues there, we'll figure those out. We hope.
When they asked us to do this panel, and they told us we had 45 minutes, I said, "You said 45 hours, didn't you?" And they said, "No, 45 minutes." So that's crazy. So we had a couple more questions here. I'm going to move into the next sort of chapter, which is employee engagement, employee retention. And I'll start with a question is, do you have an employee recognition program or incentives? If so, what is it and how does it work? Neil?
So we talked about sales plan. They're 100% commission in our stores, and our sales managers that run those stores are incentivized based on the volume that their sales consultants push out. So I think those are pretty good incentives. While the hours can be long, we offer a 5-day work week for everybody. We're not open on Sundays, and so I think some of those are fairly good incentives. If you come from automotive, from other types of dealerships, sometimes they don't offer that. But still, the hours can be long, but the incentives are in the commission pay. On the collection front, our collectors can make bonuses based on cash collected, so they have some upside too. So they make a modest hourly, but the upside is where you can kind of bring them in the door and get them to stick around, because they know if they can get the cash in the door, which is great for us, we'll pay them a modest kind of cut of that back to them in bonuses. We do have some recognition for our sales teams if they hit certain tiers throughout the year. We have an annual program called EAGLE, and the EAGLE is an acronym, and there's certain metrics they have to hit, and then we recognize those employees every February that hit those certain tiers in terms of sales goals. The store managers have a piece of that too, so there's a piece of the EAGLE program that's for our store managers, and this year we're actually incorporating something for our reconditioning team. So they have certain tier. We have a big reconditioning center in just outside Atlanta, and those folks are measured based on production of vehicles and throughput. So we do try to, we're kind of, I would say, in our infancy stages in terms of recognition. But we find that those programs go a long way. People like to be recognized. People like to be put on a pedestal, told they're doing a good job, and sometimes that goes further than pay. And so we're working hard at some of those types of programs to bring them into the organization.
Those are really good points, Neil. So in our organization, we've got company-wide recognition and local in-store recognition, whether it's Employee of the Month, a monthly breakfast or luncheon for all the employees to get together just to share ideas, but making sure that the people that do a good job get recognized, regardless of what department they're in. So we want to have goals for these employees. If they hit their goals, then they get a recognition, whether it's a day off, a $50 spiff, or if we see a guy actually out there just picking up trash when he's not asked to do something like that, just to make sure that they know that we care about them enough to recognize them.
Yeah, I totally agree. For recognition, because again, we're very small and nimble, but it's mostly on the sales side. We do recognize Salesmen of the Month. They get nice big Texas plaques with a star in it. We've got one guy that's been with me for 26 years, and he doesn't even have any more wall space. And you know, as small as that may seem, what an impression it makes on the customers. I happen to be sitting right in front of his office, and I see them as they sit down, and he jumps up and takes the deal into the desk. And they're looking around at all the stuff, and then they ask questions, you know, and I know it just makes him swell up with pride. Just a small little thing like that. When it comes to bonuses and things like that, I pay an annual bonus. All my salesmen, there's also several bonus levels to their commissions where they reach certain levels. And then I think that's pretty much it. Oh, the only other thing I would say is that one of the fun things is that, you know, the salesman of the week, and we do that too, whoever sells the most cars gets to pick what we eat lunch on Saturday. If we've had a good one, then, you know, the book is wide open. If it's been a rough week, then it might be, well, we got pizza and chicken and whatever. It's not going to be Ruth Chris this week. But they get to pick what we're going to have for lunch on Saturday. So anything, just the smallest little things you can do, even whether you want to do a balloon pop, do a bonus where if you sell 2 cars today, you get to pop a balloon, and there's going to be anywhere from $100 to $500 in this balloon. Just whatever you can do to incentivize and make it more fun. I think that's what we try to do.
Great idea.
Everybody has an incentive plan at Team Easy Auto. You know, I agree with Neil. I think a good working environment means a lot to people, and we're open Monday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., and we give everybody an additional day off during the week. And, you know, I think that goes a long way. We also have what we call the Team Member of the Year Award that we give at our annual Christmas party. We give a small annual bonus. Everybody gets their birthdays off. We try to schedule a dinner to kind of have a little bit of team building at least once a quarter. Again, you know, bring lunch in from time to time. But, and I really like what Scott said about the plaques on the wall and how that makes an impression on the customer. I think that's important, and, I think it just comes down to trying to make your folks feel important. And we do what we can, every day with a small budget to try to do that, just make them feel as important as we can.
Okay, I said I'd leave a couple minutes towards the end for questions from the floor. What I'm going to ask you to do is step to the microphone. I'm going to go through one more question with the panel, and then I'll see how many people are lined up here and get through your questions. So line up, ask your question when I get to you, and we'll ask one more question to the panel. Do you provide performance reviews for your staff? If so, how often? Neil?
We have an annual review process. It's normally in the spring. But we try and encourage our managers to have those attaboy or hard conversations throughout the year, because if you wait till the review time, sometimes people are surprised. Most people think they're doing a good job, but if you surprise them with a poor review, it's kind of a failure on your part for not having those conversations throughout the year. We also rank our employees. When I say rank, I don't mean 1 through 500, but when we put them into groups, and we have conversations about them at management levels and put them into four categories: top performers, there's 2 middle categories, and then poor performers. And really what that's supposed to do is put people in a position, people on a list for who might be ready for the next advancement from a career pathing standpoint. And then also if they're at the bottom of the list, it's to force the managers to have those conversations, those hard conversations, and you're going to either reform or remove. And it only makes the company better. And these employees don't necessarily know what their ranking is, but they know that they're being measured and monitored on a quarterly basis. And we like to talk about our good employees and our top performers, and then reward them as needed. Hey, this person's burned out. What's next for them? What can we have them do now? How can we promote them? How can we give them more responsibilities and so on? But it happens on both ends, both on the top end and the bottom end. But I guess to answer your question, I kind of went off on a tangent there. But to answer your question, we do strongly believe in performance reviews, but with the caveat that there should be conversations happening all the time.
Yep.
Neil, I agree with that 100%. We do a 90-day review with the employee, and then we do an annual review. But one of the things I've been studying is it's an association called Best Places to Work. It's the top 100. And they do a review with the employee every 30 days. So he knows if he's doing a good job real fast, and I agree with what you're saying, not wait until the end of the year to do a review. We're going to go to that process. It's a lengthy process, and it's costly. But several of the businesses, one of them, Automotive Resources, that we do business with, has been, and Credit Acceptance also, have been best places to work for the last several years. And I really admire those companies that will go out and take that much time to invest with the employee, because if you can take a good employee and make him better, or a bad employee and make him good, it's going to make you a better company. I've got a friend of mine that is in the Burger King business, and his turnover is 300%. I'm going like, 300%? I mean, I'm surprised they're not killing people, not knowing how to cook hamburgers. And I said, so why do people quit? He said, they'll quit if a bus stop opens, if there's a burger joint that opens closer to the bus stop than where you are. They'll quit for 25 cents an hour. Like 300%, man, that's all you'd be doing is hiring people. Mm-hmm. So people knowing whether they're doing a good job or a bad job is paramount for them doing a good job.
Scott?
So in the first year, 6 months, and then at the end of the year, and then every year thereafter. However, I would say as small as we are, it's really a daily process. I mean, because we're so nimble and small, and I'm right there, I know what's going on in all the offices, and when things don't go right, or we feel like we can make an improvement, then as soon as the customer's out or whatever, then it's time to sit down and talk about what just happened right now. And that's the way we do it. We do it because it's right there in front of me. It's easy to do it that way. And so we address things on a daily basis, I would say. But when it comes to performance reviews, that's typically annually, unless it's in the first year, then that's after 6 months. So.
And I mentioned about 3.5 years ago, we had 110% turnover in 6 months. I truly believe things happen for a reason, and it made me a better manager by going through that, and this is one of the things that I do a much better job of. I know we're all busy and we're all running, but it means so much, as they've all very eloquently described. It means so much to people for you to take the time to sit down and go over their performance with them. And we've seen it make a tremendous difference for us. That's one of the things that we've changed in the way we do things. As we do an annual review, we're having constant conversations, but we're definitely taking the time with folks to do that.
All right, let me just ask if there's, we got a question from the floor, so you got the floor. Go ahead.
All right, I think I heard one of you say that you have a sales manager. If you do have sales managers, what are the duties of your sales manager, and if you don't, why not?
We've got sales managers because salespeople need leadership and all, and their goal in our stores is to talk to every customer before that customer leaves, because you can save a lot of deals by just catching that customer, slowing them down, sitting them down, finding out why they're not buying a car. Maybe they don't get along with the salesperson. Maybe they don't have enough down payment. Maybe you can take a deposit on a car. But there's no reason for that customer to leave. You've paid a big price to get that customer in your store. And if you don't talk to that customer, whether you're like Scott or Chris or like us, somebody needs to talk to that customer before he leaves, because he's going to go somewhere and buy a car. I was talking to my sales guys one day, and we get like, I don't know, 1,500 applications over the internet every month, and we sell 600 cars. I'm going like, where are those other 900 people going? They're buying a car somewhere. Go out here and stand on the front porch, and when you get to 100 bicycles that rode by, come get me. Because they're not going and buying a bicycle, they're going and buying a car from somewhere.
Yeah, and we have sales managers too. Their role is to talk to all the customers, whether they do or not, I'm not sure. It's to help structure the deal. It's to help coach the sales consultant on down payments are key, right? So it's helping the sales consultant sell the customer on a greater amount down, or to understand why the amount down that they need to put down is what it is. And so it's a multifaceted approach, and they're incentivized on sales alone right now, but working on some plans to make them more sort of general managers, so that there's an expense component, that they're sort of more well-rounded in how they look at the business. And so I think that they're a critical role to the success of the organization, for us at least.
For us, I would say, again, it's real small. So my right-hand man is the GM, the GSM, and the SM. So that's why I'm talking about putting them all together, if you can put them all together. And he takes a turn on everything. And if he's not there, then I'm the one who's taking that turn. So the desk is touched for every single customer. We get a chance to talk to them before anyone leaves. And again, like I said, definitely you have a sales manager. We just combine that with the GSM and the GM. It's all together.
I don't have a right-hand man. So I am the GM, the sales manager, but that's a good thing. Again, we made some changes 3.5 years ago, and one of those is I'm downstairs on the sales floor every day now. That's just where I am, and it's been great. I've enjoyed it. I've got more interaction with the customers, and I'm trying to talk to everybody before they leave every day. So but I do think it's very important to have that person in place, whether it's yourself or an employee. Very, very important.
All right, there you have it. 45 minutes of key drivers to success in building your team in the digital age. I think you'll probably find these panel members at our NABD Dealer Lounge during our Vendor Expo, which is coming up next. I'd ask you to please join me in thanking our all-star panel for their experience and